Hi everybody, welcome to the Selful Soul. My name is Gladys, and this is the third series in the fourth video in a series on education. My guest today is Edna Rooth. Some of you will know her well. The truth is, I've never met Edna, but something about her soul, her spirit, and what she shares on Facebook invited me, or drew me to her. I really had a strong feeling that she was someone that I'd like to speak to, and I'm so glad that I did. Up to now, I have seen the interviews as simply as podcasts, really, which is why, well, anyway, I've seen them as podcasts, and which they are. They have value as podcasts for those who just want to listen to the insightful sharings by the people, beginning with Frank Mankies, and then with Prof. Lebo Moletsane, and then with Envo Motala. All these people have deep insights and have something engaging and thought-provoking to share. So I thought of them that way until I chatted with Edna. Edna's first comments to me was, this is such a useful educational resource that students can use to debate issues and talk about the issues that are really relevant to them, especially education, students that will one day be teachers, right? So it's helped me reframe completely the way I'm seeing these videos, and I'm renaming the series Rethinking Education. And I'm rethinking the way I do those videos. Edna, you have touched me profoundly. Thank you for that. Thank you for your input. Thank you for your kindness, for your generous nature. Welcome, Edna. And thank you so much for being here, because this, the more I've read from what you've shared with me, the more I realized that the more I've understood life orientation and its significance and how important it is. Enver spoke in his talk about the purpose of education, that we start with the purpose. And for me, life orientation is that thing that addresses the purpose in the most broad sense, hey? And it starts with the individual. It's not like a one size fits all.
Exactly, spot on.
So Edna, will you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do and what's important to you?
Thank you. Yes, it's such a privilege to be here and an honor. Thank you, Gladys. You're doing such awesome work.
Thanks, Edna.
I'm a lot of things. I'm an author, a facilitator, and a life skills and life orientation activist. I was involved in teacher training at a number of universities and also in curriculum development. And my big thing was life skills facilitation with a focus on developing participatory methods. What is important to me is life skills and life orientation. These subjects are the oxygen of schools, colleges, universities, and society. So what is also important for me is to be part of decolonising education and also using experiential participatory teaching methods that engage learners actively and deeply. And the topics of life skills and life orientation curricula are what makes my world go around. That is what I breathe. That is what I dream. That is what I do.
Yeah. Okay. So as an educationist, you've followed and or been involved in some way in the changes in education in South Africa since the birth of our democracy. So from your perspective, what did we inherit as a new democracy in '94, and what were the consequences of that?
Thank you. That is such a good rooted question. We inherited the effects of apartheid, the effects of colonialism, religious indoctrination, separate education, inequality in schools, poverty, separate teacher colleges, racism, injustice, capitalism at its worst, violence, patriarchy, and authoritarianism. we are collectively traumatized as a nation. Now, this is not something that we can be swept under the carpet. We cannot just move on as if nothing happened. We cannot just get over it. We cannot just move on. So those are the effects that permeate who we are, what we do, and how we do it. And our schools were not on an equal footing in terms of resources, infrastructure, and learners per class. We inherited this inequality. And many of our teachers were fixated on corporal punishment and the damage done by Christian national authoritarian education to the hearts and minds of teachers and learners could not be undone in an instant. The talk and chalk teacher-centeredness permeated the essence of teaching. Violence permeated the essence of teaching. And it's very difficult to undo instantaneously. So we came since 1994 with a lot of baggage that in some instances we have not yet dealt with adequately.
You would know the changes that we've been through because we've had a number of changes in education. What were the changes that were implemented over the years? And why do you think they happened and were necessary? What do you think worked well and was a good idea, and what wasn't?
Great, thank you. I'm just going to focus on some core changes. The first one was unifying the separate education systems into one, because we had separate systems based on race, which was so totally ludicrous. That was very necessary, absolutely essential. So now we have the Department of Basic Education, which is one system of schools for all races and all schools. And that was perfect. That was a big, big change. And then we changed the system. We started with OBE, which was a complete shift from the authoritarian teacher-centeredness we had before. This was much more learner-centered. And this was essential to make a complete break from the past. Sadly, we have now moved away from OBE. And my feeling is we should have given it more time and adapted it to create our own version, an Africanized version to suit our needs as a nation.
You know, I come from an adult education background, and when OBE was first introduced, I was really excited, and I think you would have been too.
Yes, I wanted to be a learner again because it was wonderful. Your voice could be heard. You could work in groups. You could go at your own pace. You could go deeper into issues that you were interested in. I mean, that was heaven. You were allowed to be creative. And that was totally the opposite of my schooling experiences.
And why do you think, was it pressure, do you think, from other sources, forces, or I suppose it could have been a number of issues? Why do you think we moved?
That's a difficult one. I think it was pressure from universities. Some universities did not agree with the OBE system. Some teachers did not like the change. There were some issues with resources in some schools, and in some cases OBE was misunderstood, where some teachers just stopped teaching altogether. They said, well, this is OBE. They didn't quite understand. But my feeling is if we just kept at it a little bit longer and had more training for teachers and had more in-service training for teachers, it could have worked beautifully. And if we Africanized it and made it our own. We tried to import models from overseas as is, and that cannot work for us. And we need to believe in ourselves and our own potential as a nation. We can do it for ourselves. So that was a bit sad, and I hope that one day we can revisit OBE and maybe just call it something else, because now it's got some stigma attached to it, and come up with a new system that can really accommodate our learners and teachers to reach their full potential. And my feeling was that OBE had beginnings of that. And then we have the National Senior Certificate, which is essential. It's one exit exam for everybody. and the national curriculum statement, new curriculum. In essence, it was very good curricula for the various subjects, but many of them are too full, overloaded, and because of that, in many instances, superficial and not challenging enough. So we need to look at our African countries around us because their curricula are more challenging and actually have less maybe content or topics to cover, but they do go deeper, and that is important. So there's so much we can learn from our continent. And then we had the CAPS, which was a big change. I believe curriculum review that is ongoing is good. You can't just stick with the same curriculum forever. But CAPS in itself was too rushed. It was implemented far too quickly. It was too much of a paint by numbers and limited curriculum because teachers are told what to teach per week and per term. And that is really awkward. If you have learners with issues, now do you have to tell them, I'm sorry, I can't deal with your depression and stress right now because that's only for term so-and-so, week so-and-so. It doesn't work for life orientation. And it was overfull. There are just so many topics. And it lacked depth and guidance, what was needed. And there were far too many assessments. So now, sadly, many teachers teach the curriculum, not learners, just so that they can tick and say, okay, I covered this. But it doesn't mean the learners understand it or know it or feel it in their hearts. Because, for example, life orientation is very much about the heart and about love, and it's become just a subject now, like everything else, just to cover. And then doing away with corporal punishment. Thank you. That was essential because this harms much more than anything else, and it adds to the violence that is permeating our society. And teaching children that you solve problems by physical violence is not setting a good example. So that was excellent. Now, there are a few new subjects, including life orientation, and I'm going to talk a lot still about life orientation. That was essential. And the change from a Christian national education to a much more inclusive education. So now we teach about diverse religions instead of pushing just one religion. And that was absolutely essential. And now we have free schooling for all, free textbooks and free stationery, and there's a small school fee, but if you can't pay it, then you don't have to. Nobody can be chased away from school because they can't pay the school fee. And previously, only whites had free schooling. School fees are really not enforced where parents cannot pay. We have feeding schemes at schools, which is great. So at least some learners are getting 1 or 2 good meals a day. And we have new values in education with a human rights focus, and that was a big shift. Before 1994, there were no human rights in schools or in the schooling system or in the schooling philosophy at all. The curriculum for social studies and history is still very colonial and does not focus on African history enough and does not have an Afrocentric approach. So that is a big disappointment. It should have been immediately Africanized, and we are neglecting our indigenous knowledge and our indigenous history and African history. What was not a good idea was closing of the teacher colleges. Yes, some were below standard and with poor facilities, but they should have been revamped. The universities are not coping because they are too theoretical, the courses for teacher education are too short, and the classes are too large. Sometimes they have 300 students in a class. Now imagine how much practical work they can do. They end up talking through a PowerPoint, which is not setting a good example or how to teach. And often you can do an undergraduate degree and then you just do 1 year PGCE. And that's really not enough because the colleges, you will do 3 to 4 years, and from year 1 you will attend schools and do practice teaching, and that's where you learn the most. I can see the difference between people who've been to university and people who've been to teacher training colleges. And the teachers who've been to teacher training colleges, they fly at school. They are actually the best teachers. They are practical, and they know immediately what to do.
Yeah.
And then the last point is the overly large classes in schools. It's this thing of moving teachers when the numbers are reduced, so they have to go to other schools. They lose teachers, and that for me is tragic, because our learners need smaller classes. Our teachers need smaller classes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of overcrowding in our schools. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the big changes was life orientation, introducing that into our curriculum. So can you talk about the significance of this, Edna, and why it's so important?
Oh, yes, I love talking about life orientation. Again, this is the oxygen.
Yeah.
You know, life orientation covers human rights, the environment, health, self-development, career education, physical education, and no other subjects do these topics. It is also the only subject that helps with nation building. So it also enables the improved learning of other subjects. If you know yourself and you're motivated and you believe in yourself, you're going to want to study hard in your other subjects, because you want to go into a college or a university or a workplace. And if you understand study skills and apply them correctly, you're going to do much better in your other subjects. And you're going to enjoy your schooling, and you're going to understand why you're there. So this subject is helping all the other subjects.
Yes.
You know, if you look at the aim, it aims to help learners towards successful living and learning. And that is so beautiful.
Yes.
That is such a powerful statement of intent. And it's not just teaching the little brain sitting at a desk and making that little brain pass. It's the whole learner.
Yes.
So it's looking at their physical, intellectual, personal, emotional, and social potential. It's holistic.
Yes.
But it's also important that, sorry.
I guess, and that's what helps a learner realize that because they don't like maths doesn't make them stupid, just means they don't like maths and they are good at something else, you know?
Exactly. It gives learners opportunities to explore other things that they can excel in, because everybody needs success experiences.
Yes.
And learners tend to put themselves down and saying, oh, my life is over, I can't do well in maths, therefore I have no future. And that's not true. There are so many things you can do without maths. And often learners can't do maths because they lack confidence. It's you know, going into the unknown, solving problems. So if you work on the confidence issue in life orientation, you're actually going to help them in the maths class.
Yes. And
it's also,
I just have this thought, and you can tell me if I'm on the right track. But when I think about OBE and how I understand OBE to be, it would take away the pressure of seeing maths as this separate thing that's not part of broader life in a way.
Absolutely. Because learners learn in different ways and at different paces. But I think it's also important that people know what life orientation is not, because it's become the parking garage for everything that people have issues with. And of course, it's not practical. Life orientation cannot solve all the problems or do all the things, and it should be spread around so that other subjects include some aspects as well. You know, our learners face the very complex challenge of living in an increasingly demanding and rapidly changing world, where they need to make informed and responsible decisions almost on a daily basis. So issues such as health, fitness, lifestyle, careers, and relationships are core to their well-being. The HIV and now the COVID pandemic demands urgent attention, and it was the life orientation teachers at schools who were running the COVID prevention measures. They were the leaders there. So thank goodness for life orientation. And you know, environmental education has never been as important as now. We won't have a future if we don't sort out our environment. And sadly, the easy, free availability of drugs and alcohol is a serious threat to our youth. And life orientation deals with substance abuse and use. And then we have human rights, GBV, and gender equity promotion and countering xenophobia, which are huge challenges that our learners face. And then determining a value system based on our constitutional principle is a very urgent need, and life orientation does that. So life skills and social education are vital and underlie much of life orientation. So I just want to talk about a little bit about what life orientation teaches.
Yeah.
It teaches decision making and problem solving. And that is really, really important because there's methods that you can use. It teaches goal setting. So if you have goals, you know where you are going. Otherwise, you don't know where you are going. It teaches creative and critical thinking, emotional literacy, and then self-concept. You know, we have this collective negative self-image, and life orientation is helping us to work on that. It also, you know, it looks at stress management, it looks at self-management, and it looks at emotional literacy and having an internal locus of control. And it looks at resilience as being a protective factor. It looks at affirmation. It looks at you being your own imbongi, be your own praise singer, know your good qualities and expand on them. And then lastly, human rights have the potential to be a shared value system, and life orientation teaches that. We also look at role models. I just briefly want to look at the topics. Topic 1 is development of the self in society, and that looks at enhancing self-awareness and self-esteem. And self-knowledge is so important.
Yeah.
Topic 2 is social and environmental responsibility. So here we look at climate change and social and environmental justice, which is core given our legacy of inequality and apartheid. And then we look at organic food gardening projects, which is so necessary, even especially now. Topic 3, democracy and human rights. It's so obvious. We are a new democracy. And we have a legacy of human rights abuses. So we came with that. So we have to look at our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, gender-based violence, stigma, racism, rape, abuse, discrimination, and these negative aspects. From a practical viewpoint, what can you do in your personal life to prevent it? And topic 4, careers and career choices, is vital. Many of our students are first-generation students to attend university, so they don't have a huge network to call on. So networking skills, how to apply, when to apply, how to apply for a bursary, when to apply for a bursary, which subjects to choose, why work is important, how to counter unemployment, what are the alternatives if you can't get into University of Technology or a college.
Yes.
There are so many alternatives available. So, and then topic 5 is study skills, you know, how the brain works, how we learn, why we learn, and how to get the most out of your brain.
Yeah.
And topic 6 is physical education. And we need our learners to keep moving for their overall health and enjoyment. And I think, you know, we all danced the Jerusalem, and teachers were using that in the PE period.
Yeah, yeah.
So instilling in learners the importance of regular exercise, of chances also to excel. No other subjects teach this, but you do require a specialized teacher. Not just anybody can teach life orientation. You know, a life orientation teacher is a psychologist, a lawyer, a social worker, an environmentalist, a health worker, a financial advisor, and a fitness instructor, all in one person. Can I read a poem I wrote to show what a life orientation teacher is about?
Yes,
It was for grade 11 teachers, but it applies to all grades. The life orientation teacher. I skill my learners for life. I develop self in society and help learners to plan and achieve life goals apply problem-solving skills, understand relationships, and how they influence well-being. I skill my learners for life. I guide my learners towards healthy lifestyle choices as they apply informed, responsible decision-making skills, understand gender roles, and their effects on health and well-being. I skill my learners for life. I promote social and environmental responsibility, educate about environmental issues that cause ill health, climate change, and enable participation to address an environmental issue. I school my learners for life. I teach democracy and human rights, acknowledge contributions of our country's diverse religions and beliefs to a harmonious society, debate ethical dilemmas, critical yet respectful thinkers I help develop. I skill my learners for life. I teach careers and career choices, higher education institution admission requirements and funding options, competencies, abilities, and ethics needed for a career, expectations and career realities, preparing learners for the world of work for the future. I skill my learners for life. Study skills is a focus, exploring study styles and strategies, improving exam writing skills, time management, and annual study plans I insist learners follow as they set study, health, and fitness goals. I skill my learners for life. Physical education is what I do, getting and staying fit and healthy, developing leadership skills, each one teach one, Indigenous games, leaders develop through recreation and group activities, all the while staying safe. I skill my learners for life. I promote life orientation. This fundamental subject, I ensure, gets its rightful timetable space and meaningful place in all hearts and minds. I am a life orientation teacher.
That's so beautiful, Edna. Okay, which brings us nicely to the next point. Why are people not taking this? I gather, even from that letter that you shared with me, that it's so easy for life orientation to be replaced or negated. And why do you think it's not given the seriousness it warrants, especially because, like, really, this has been so eye-opening for me, all my interactions with you up to now, how central it is, I guess, to our well-being, to our future of young people, So
Exactly. I want to start at the so-called top. I want to start with universities. Some do not take life orientation marks into account for entrance requirements. So life orientation is not recognized and included in the point system required for university entry. And the ramifications of that are huge. What message are they sending? And I want to quote a professor in education studies from a university who said, quote, universities are still struggling to make a clear relationship between life orientation and what value it carried at university level. The subject has no real material value and should not be part of the curriculum beyond grade 9. Most universities do not recognize it for the obvious reasons. It is useless and has no impact on what is being studied at institutions of higher learning. When it comes to grade 11 and 12, life orientation is taking up space in the curriculum that could instead be used for other core subjects, end quote. Of course, this is nonsense.
Yeah.
But if it's repeated enough, some uninformed people start believing it. So these messages get filtered down. It's in the media, it's in tweets, it's on social media, it's in printed media. People start believing this utter rubbish. And one student at the same university who's studying medicine had the following to say: As a medical student, life orientation was not needed to gain access. She said that the subject carried important value in preparing young people for the future. I believe that life orientation is important, and it has helped me understand life better and to make good life and career choices. I believe that it needs to stay in the school curriculum. You know, this is wonderful, but again points to students not being involved with curricula. They are not heard nor listened to. Their opinion is not asked. So here's a student at the same university, and I can vouch for this. I took my life orientation A students on an outing to a university, and one of the students came running towards our group, and she embraced one of the teachers, and she said, "Oh, because of you, I am here today. I'm third year law. I was just about to drop out of school in grade 11, and you told me, no, you have the potential to be a lawyer. I know you can be a lawyer." And you motivated me, and I am here today because of you. And I mean, we all just burst into tears. It was such a beautiful moment. And then people each had a chance to tell stories of how they've helped students. And there are so many of these stories. And I think maybe we need to publicize these stories. There was also a voice of reason that some chair people of parents associations say that life orientation should stay, and that the skills taught in life orientation were able to help a large number of youth find ways to make a living and live in a better way. So there's this balance, but there's similar attitudes at other universities, and lecturers tell me they have to fight for the subject. It's not given the same status and space at universities. And another example, a professor who uses a newspaper column to spew forth vitriol about life orientation when he wants attention, repeatedly points out that, and I quote, "South Africa is the only country with a stupid subject like life orientation. Disagree if you wish, but life orientation should be taught by parents, not by teachers. And parents should disregard the life orientation marks because everybody gets more than 70 or 80%. End quote. And he's actually talking nonsense, because in other African countries, Tanzania, Malawi, Kenya, Rwanda, Ghana, Zimbabwe, we have life orientation. It just has different names. So sometimes it's called life skills, sometimes it's called social studies, sometimes it's called civics, but it's there. So, you know, we're not the only country, but people from America and the United Kingdom visit us because they want to learn more about how we teach life orientation. And they're quite jealous of us because they don't have something like that. And they also want it there. So we can be very proud because we are world leaders in many ways in life orientation. And yes, we are working hard to raise the level of life orientation. But my question is, why not have learners experience success and high marks? Just because you're failing maths, you should not also fail life orientation. I don't see the logic, you know. And definitely parents cannot teach life orientation. Many parents are so busy working to make a living, so they leave home early because of apartheid's spatial separation. They have to leave the house at 4 o'clock in the morning and the kids are still sleeping, and they get home late at night and the kids are sleeping. So when are they supposed to be teaching life orientation? I believe that universities should be saying, hey, we want to see your marks for your life orientation projects, especially your community volunteer work, because that will give us an indication of how well you're going to be doing as a rounded person at university. And life skills acquisition is a predictor of higher education institution success, and the research is clearly available but ignored. And then the workplaces are saying graduates lack life skills. And workplaces find it very hard to teach life skills. They can teach the other workplace-related skills, but not the life skills. courses that many universities and universities of technology offer don't adequately prepare teachers to teach life orientation. Some don't even offer life orientation as a method subject, while others disregard the curriculum and teach whatever. So this is a message then that filters down, because I was saying that life orientation is not important. So some learners will say, I don't need this for getting into an HEI, higher education institution. And parents are saying the high marks are meaningless. And learners are saying, I should not have to put effort into this subject. And I see this in a life orientation, life skills Facebook page I run, where learners the night before an assignment is due for life orientation, they'll put in a request for help, and they would just like the answers to copy and paste. Of course, I refuse, but when I talk to them, they say that no, but this is not important, and this is not helping them get into university, and they just want the answers to pass. So, so you know, universities need to shoulder a lot of the blame for the attitudes towards life orientation. And then my next one is principals. Some of the principals do not understand the significance of life orientation. They look at results for matric, and they look at the circus every year when the matric results come out, and then schools are said, okay, this list of schools are non-performing, they're going to get into trouble, and these are the top schools, and rah, rah, rah. And that's very unfair. So they are quite reactive, and they react and they want life orientation only when there's a problem at the school. For example, there's a drug problem. Now suddenly the life orientation teacher must jump. Or there's an increase in teen pregnancy, so now the life orientation teacher must do something. And yet they don't continuously support life orientation throughout the year. And then the issue of exams. Life orientation is a compulsory, standardized, nationwide examination for matric, moderated by Umaluzi. And it's been like this for the past few years. But many people in the media still say, oh, it's a non-exam subject. Learners have to pass life orientation in order to obtain the NSC, the National Senior Certificate. But the only problem is that this exam is written well before the end of the year matric. So it's written normally in September, and it's internally marked. So it's not seen as part of the matric package. And it should be a 3-hour exam, but it's only 2 hours. So those are things that still need to improve. And then the issues around timetabling. Oh goodness, there's not enough time for life orientation. There's only 1 hour, because it's 2 hours, because 1 hour is dedicated to physical education, and the other hour to all the other 5 life orientation topics. And then some schools only give 30 to 45 minutes a week instead of the required 1 hour. Other schools are using a cyclical timetable system. So learners only have life orientation once every 10 days. And if that's for 30 minutes, imagine what can be done in that short time. So it really compromises life orientation. And also some schools put life orientation last thing on a Friday afternoon, and then the school closes early and they miss out, or first thing on a Monday morning when people are coming in late because they disregard it. So the issues around timetable puts undue pressure on life orientation teachers. Some are so stressed, they have to be booked off work because they cannot complete the curriculum, and they cannot complete the curriculum in the required depth. So learners lose out on essential knowledge and skills due to this time shortage. We have a very short school day actually, so we can really think of extending the time. It's also for me tragic that Indigenous knowledge is marginalized. We have such a rich wellspring of knowledge in Africa. So life orientation aims to teach more Indigenous knowledge, but teachers find it challenging given the time constraints. So sadly, they just rush to cover the caps, and that's it. And then we have perceptions and attitudes. Many parents don't understand the subject. Some people are scared of it. There's been bad press, so the media also sometimes act in an uninformed way. And then some of the privileged minority denigrate life orientation because they live in a bubble. They are not aware of poverty, social issues, and think in narrow, racist, and privileged terms. They are living in an apartheid world of the past and have not accepted and promoted change. And they do not consider the majority of the people in the country. And then we don't have enough learners' input. Learners are saying nothing about us without us, but this cry is often not heard. You know, what do learners want to learn in the life orientation class? What are their needs? Our promotion opportunities are limited for life orientation teachers. Some schools promote life orientation teachers to other subjects. Oh, you're doing so well. Now you're good enough to teach this subject or that subject, which is tragic. And there are very few life orientation departmental head posts. So this again, takes away from the status of the subject. And then there's a severe lack of teacher training. I've touched on that already because universities are struggling. Some schools allocate whoever has a free period to teach life orientation. And there is such a turnaround then in staff, or you have only one period of life, one class to teach. So how much preparation are you going to do for one class? And they would rather have the free period, and then they start hating ELO. So much more training is needed, and stability and continuity in personnel. For example, a teacher will attend a life orientation workshop today, but tomorrow they're teaching another subject. So that's all wasted. It's lack of continuity. And then a big issue that is harming life orientation is using talk and chalk methods. Learners require opportunities to experiment, to try, to test ideas, to do role plays, to reflect on their processes, and to be actively involved in their own learning. They need to have the chance to practice their life skills within the safety of the life orientation classroom. Now, most often, this does not happen. So learners are bored in class. They tell me the teacher is just reading from the textbook. And that's boring. That's killing life orientation. So often group work doesn't happen because teachers say the classes are too large and the time is too limited. And reflection doesn't happen because reflection helps us to think about our learning and experiences. It helps us to learn, consolidate, and grow. The more we reflect, the more meaningful our experiences are. The more we reflect, the more we can learn from experience. So for me, that's very sad. And then DBE, unfortunately, has to take some of the responsibility. For example, the handling of the sexuality education issue. They got such bad press last year because of their intended sexuality education publications. Initially, there was a lack of transparency, but eventually they made the booklets public, but then the damage was already done because there was a secrecy and misunderstanding.
Yes.
And then the DBE itself does not appear to value the subject. There was a fiasco in 2018 when the Minister of DBE announced the plan to replace life orientation with history in grades 10 to 12.
Yes.
The life orientation teachers were absolutely devastated. The word is that this will only be looked at again in 2024, and hopefully by then we would have life orientation stronger and more established, so it will not be usurped. History and life orientation are very different, and very few historians have studied psychology. At most universities, you can choose history method or life orientation method. You can't do them together because very, very few teachers choose to be history and life orientation teachers. That is not a good fit. So, that is really, really absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Okay, and then Edna, there are places and spaces where this is working to good effect. There are teachers, educators that are taking this on board. Can you talk about some of the experiences of?
Yes. Oh, yes. There are so many good news stories and so many positives. I mean, we have been focusing on some of the challenges,
Yeah.
but there is so much good. And yeah, I just love using African words of wisdom all the time. So this one, if you ever think you are too small to make a difference, try spending the night cooped up with a mosquito. And whatever you can do as a life orientation teacher, even if it feels small, is making a massive, massive beneficial difference to learners. I want to mention that there's a voice of sanity coming from Umaluzi. Dr. Rakometsi, the Umaluzi Chief Executive Officer, said that Umaluzi was convinced that life orientation is an important subject that needed to continue to grade 12 because it taught important values and covered the importance of physical health and assisted learners to choose their subjects and careers wisely. So Umaluzi is busy trying to make the subject university credited. And they are very strong, and Umaluzi really loves life orientation. A few universities, but sadly in the minority, have excellent life orientation teaching practice departments. So they are training teachers to specifically teach life orientation. And I'm thinking of Wits University is a great example of this. I would like to talk a little bit about the TVET sector, if I may.
Yes.
I think there's so much that the DBE can learn from the TVET sector. In TVET, we have 5 hours a week for life orientation versus the school's 1 hour. And that already says a lot. And it's also a fundamental, so it's compulsory for the NCV. And in TVET colleges are doing much to promote the worthiness of the subject. They have exams on a par with other exams. So at the end of the year, your main exit exam, which is your level 4 exam, is externally set, moderated, and marked on a par with all the other exams. And then what they cleverly have is they have included basic computer literacy as part of life orientation. So they now call it life skills and basic computer literacy. So we're moving away from the name life orientation because it also comes with baggage because of all the negative press and so on. And people in the business world don't quite understand what is life orientation, but they understand, oh, these are life skills and these are basic computer skills. A person who's doing so much, Mr. David Modiba from the DHET, Department of Higher Education and Training, is a Deputy Director of TVET College Curriculum Development and Support, and he's promoting life orientation and helping to strengthen life orientation so much. And also the Minister of Higher Education, Mr. Blade Nzimande, he really values life orientation and ensures it is given the necessary attention. And when it comes from the top, it makes a huge difference. And lecturers feel, wow, I'm actually teaching an important subject at the colleges. And, you know, I just want to, from my observations, I met 4 life orientation lecturers who I like to call the awesome foursome. That are making life orientation come alive at Sebokeng campus. And they run superb life skills and computer literacy classes. So Karabo Zwana, Tabita Puti, Tandeka Mohale, and Refilo Mohashua, they are the shining stars. And then the DHET life orientation has also chosen life orientation champions or appointed them. And they represent various regions. So we have Minky McKenzie, for example, Bianca Roberts, Sadwa Sikua, Red Pino, and they have just run online workshops on citizenship education. And they are so proactive. So life orientation is moving and growing and exciting, and there's always new developments. And they also put absolutely COVID-19 related projects for this year. So they changed the projects quickly, and we had learners making masks, learners making tippy taps, learners looking at fake news and countering fake news and so on. And so that's so exciting. In the DBE, the curriculum advisors are very active. And then you have life orientation teachers with a passion for life orientation who know they make a daily difference. in the lives of their learners, teachers who are activists, who are willing to fight for life orientation, because it's a daily fight. At some schools, you even have to fight to make photocopies because they only allow photocopies for the so-called important subjects.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
they take it seriously. They prepare, they research, because life orientation is continuously changing. I mean, the world of careers changes all the time, so there's a lot of preparation. They respect learners, they have kindness, they have empathy, and they use participatory teaching methods.
Okay. Okay, and then moving on now, what should we be doing? What should be done differently in future? You know, if there's an educator listening, what advice would you give them? What would you urge them of them?
Oh, I love that question. I would say promote life orientation at every level. Speak up for this vital subject. Advocate for more time. Be an advocate for more time. Be an activist. Fight for your subject's place and space. Speak up at staff meetings. Report timetable cuts. Blow the whistle when your periods are taken away from you. Often in matric, for example, your periods get taken away for maths or English. You know, report, because that shouldn't happen.
Yes.
Go the extra length. If you run out of school sessions, create innovative projects for afternoons. Run out of school sessions, workshops. You know, think creatively. Make this work. It's everybody's responsibility.
Yes, yes.
I would like schools to follow the TVET life orientation, life skills, and computer literacy model. So please work with TVET colleges. When spiders unite, they can tie up a lion. The African proverb is so powerful. So let's see all the good things that the TVET sector is doing. I would say please integrate more Indigenous knowledge. As a start every lesson with an African saying relevant to the lesson, or a quote by an African. You know, acknowledge that we are in Africa. Encourage pride in Africa. Respect African philosophy, and introduce this to many learners who don't know about it. Please make life orientation more Afrocentric. Let us develop Indigenous and African curricula and models of psychology. You know, we are using far too much from USA. We are even using an USA life skills program, and that is not applicable. And it's a colonial imposition. I would say let's make volunteering a compulsory part of the curriculum in every subject, not only life orientation. Each one teach one, because you learn so much from volunteering, you learn so much from teaching one another, and peer education. Please, can we strengthen teaching to be deeper and less superficial, because now teachers run through so many topics, but they don't go deeper. And please, we have to insist on using interactive teaching methods. Talk and talk is killing life orientation. And let us be able to respond to needs as they arise in the life orientation class. And please, can we acknowledge the role life orientation has played in HIV prevention and now COVID prevention? I would like to rethink the way we teach, maybe a blended model of schooling, including a little bit of online. Let's use this whole COVID pandemic as a way to change the way we teach. I would like to give teachers a 3-day week, because teaching is exhausting. Many teachers teach without any free periods. There's not even time to breathe. And especially life orientation teachers, break times, they're busy counseling learners. If teachers can have a 3-day week at the same pay, don't pay them less, and then employ more teachers. We know there's money. We're hearing of all these millions that was used. Maybe we can use that for these projects. And then give teachers assistants, interns, to help with the admin, because they're really bogged down by so much of admin. And then I would definitely reinstate a better version of teacher training colleges, with the emphasis on teaching practice opportunities, and maybe consider using TVET colleges as teacher training institutions, because some of them have got great infrastructure already. So, you know, we don't have to have a whole lot of new buildings, and that'll take time and a lot of money. Let's use what we have and then just move staff there to run the teachers training college section. And I like the idea of a mentorship. Get each teacher a mentor who's not on the school staff. Use retired or older people no longer active in the workplace as mentors. I think every teacher needs a mentor, somebody they can just go and talk to, because teaching can be very, very stressful.
Yeah.
And ensure that learners are part of every curriculum development process. Ask them what they want to learn.
I love what you're saying, Edna. Okay, so I'm just going to say what I'm seeing here. What for me, the big things. I'm almost seeing three pillars that are central, and perhaps I'm wrong, but training colleges first, whether it's TVET, but that training college concept of, which is about deep education for the right people who are dedicated.
Yes.
This includes the practicals and that constant learning, the doing and learning from actual practice. Then life orientation and outcomes-based education. I don't know if this is just me thinking these are the three things that we should be pushing for at this triumvirate.
Beautiful.
Anyway, so, and then the last question for the rest of concerned citizens, and perhaps you've already addressed this, but concerned citizens, activists, parents, learners, what do you think are the key issues we need to be confronting with regard to education?
Okay, cool. First of all, basic needs, resources at schools, toilets, water, electricity, solar panels, windows, desk chairs. That's an absolute must. It's been too many years now where so many schools are without these basic necessities. And then textbook delivery is still an issue. We need one book per child. And especially in life orientation, in many schools, they share life orientation textbooks, and these books stay in the classroom. And if you have 45 minutes or even half an hour, how much can you actually read in that book? It's very difficult. Our learners need tablets, they need internet access, they need computer classes, and they need smartphones. And for me, those are basic resources. And then we need to address the racism in schools. We have schools with outdated policies on hair, and they don't accept indigenous hairstyles. They don't accept indigenous religion. I mean, recently there was a case of a school banning a child because he wore an amulet. There's name calling, there's put downs, there's separate classes, there are language issues. And let's promote the use of our home languages and respect that. We have to oppose racism actively, oppose patriarchy, colonialism, because these are all contributing to the violence we see in our schools. Smaller classes and more teachers. We have many, many, many unemployed teachers, and that should not be. I would also say fewer school days and more libraries. I would like our learners to do more self-study. We do a lot of spoon feeding at schools, and we should challenge our learners much, much more.
Yes.
So I wouldn't like them to go to school for 5 days. I would like them to have self-study days, and there should be communal libraries where they can use a computer and do research, or visit an NGO or a government organization and be like an intern and learn on the job. So more projects, more volunteering, and less 8 until 3 or whatever your school hours are. Because learners are it's like a factory. Being in a factory, it's really hard.
Yes.
And I think it can be very nice if we give them that responsibility for self-study. I would like to see the schools always used as community centers. I get very sad when I see the school lock up at 3 o'clock and it's closed for the rest of the day and evening.
Yes.
I would like more support for teachers. I would like parents to teach children to respect their teachers and to understand the issues teachers have. And I'd like parents to be active in school committees and help to green the schools and support life orientation and more hours for life orientation. And I'm those universities who do not consider life orientation marks. Parents have a lot of power. And please stop saying life orientation is a useless subject.
Yeah.
If it's not taught properly at your school, make a fuss, do something about it. Offer to run workshops, get experts in to support the teachers, ask for a change of a teacher. It's not the subject that is useless. Maybe the teacher hasn't been trained, or maybe the teacher is just using a free period and is not wanting to teach life orientation. So do make a fuss. And please avoid trying to stop sexuality education. Understand the issues, understand the needs, and understand what it is before deciding it's wrong.
Yes.
And as a nation, maybe we need to relook at our exam system and emphasis on matric. You know, we make such a big deal of matric. And we're assessing to death. There are too many assessments and too much marking and admin for our poor teachers. And then also, lastly, you know, we need to be aware there are possibly non-transparent plans to infuse life orientation and history as from 2024. So be alert and help to strengthen this essential subject, and demand that social studies be Africanized, which would mean that you don't have to infuse life orientation with anything. And please work with teachers, not against them. Communicate. You know, there's an African proverb that says, if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And let's go together with our teachers. So thank you, Gladys, for making a huge beneficial difference in education.
Oh, thank you, Edna. What a privilege, really, for me to hear. And I've learned so much just from our first engagements, you know, and looking at the materials you sent. Like, my mind was blown. Because, you know, I guess this is the thing for me is, it's almost like life orientation answers the questions of the need for more self-aware, self-loving, self-respectful people, because the more if we are teaching children how to love themselves, respect themselves, then inevitably they will love and respect the environment, love and respect others, you know. And it seems to me that this is what this is about.
Absolutely spot on. Oh. Yes, yes, yes.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Edna.